الحمد لله نحمده ونستغفره ونستعينه ونستهديه ونشكره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولا مثيل له ولا ضد له ولا ند له وأشهد أن نبينا وحبيبنا وشافعنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه وحبيبه من بعثه الله رحمة للعالمين هاديا وبشرا ونذيرا بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده فجزاه الله عنا خير ما جزى نبيا من أنبيائه فصلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. واللهم ارض عن ساداتنا أبو بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعن سائر الصحابة والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد عباد الله، فإني أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله العلي القدير القائل بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور والذين كفروا أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. This is an ayah a lot of you read on a daily basis in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 257. Allah is the guardian of those who believe. He brings them out of the roads of darknesses into the one road of light. And as to those who disbelieve or deny the truth, their guardians are the devils, the taghut, or the evildoers, who take them out of the road of light into the multiple roads and many roads of darknesses. They are inmates of the hellfire, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. In it they shall abide. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-A'raf, chapter 7, verse 203, وَإِذَا لَمْ تَأْتِهِمْ بِآيَةٍ قَالُوا لَوْلَا اجْتَبَيْتَهَا قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَتَّبِعُ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيَّ مِنْ رَبِّي هَذَا بَصَائِرُ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. And when you bring them not a revelation, they say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam, that when a revelation does not come to him, they tell the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, why do you not forge it? Why don't you make up something? So Allah told the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, say, I only follow, that the Rasul only follows what is revealed to me in reference to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, from my Lord. These are clear enlightenments. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed is a clear enlightenment from your Lord and guidance and mercy for people who believe. Where Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, بشر هذه الأمة بالثناء والرفعة والدين والنصر والتمكين في الأرض. رواه الإمام أحمد rahimahullah. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, maybe that's the only good news you're going to hear from me for today. Give glad tidings to this ummah la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, bis-sana'i wal-rif'a, that means high positions and supremacy of the pious, which we talked about before. Wad-deen, our establishment of our deen, wal-nasr, and victory in this earth. So this is a promise from Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam does not predict his prophet. He prophesied that this deen is here to stay, and this deen, even though we are down now, it does not mean we will be down forever. Allah will replace us with better generation than us, who will bring victory to this ummah. We might not live to see it, but it will happen. Those of us who have this certainty, this yaqeen, will happen. Those who understand the Quran and the Sunnah. We're going to continue, inshallah, with the subject of divine enlightenment and worldly progress. Does Islam stand against civilization? And last time, I left it where I gave a brief description of each period that the Muslim empires went through. And I left it with the Ottoman Empire, which did something different than others before them, where they neglected divine enlightenment and progress. Nations before them, they neglected the divine enlightenment only, but the Ottoman Empire neglected both. through the suspension of independent thinking in religious affairs and in worldly affairs, which is in the word for it in Arabic, ijtihad. The objective of this series, that I don't know when I'm going to finish it, the objective of it is, we know Islam is down, we know Muslims are away from it, we know we exercise Islam based on what our parents taught us, we don't understand it. We're trying to establish a love affair with a treasure we don't understand. We're trying, and until we establish that love affair with our religion, with that treasure that we call Islam, this is the best treasure, the best blessing Allah bestowed on us, until we have appreciated and build that relationship with it, our situation will not change. The reasons behind, there are reasons behind our situations, many of them. For the sake of this series, I'm only going to discuss 3 of them, and one of them, which is tyranny, whether it's religious tyranny or the other kind of tyranny, and it's considered one of the roads of darknesses. And the other one is nationalism. Nationalism is a disease of the heart, and I'm going to say in a minute the difference between nationalism and patriotism, which is we are supposed to be patriots, but not nationalists. And the second thing, which is a disease of the intellect, which is blind following. And this is what I call Tammatul Kubra, the great predominating calamity that bestowed on this Muslim Ummah, that we are blind followers. We have subtracted our intellect to others. And because of that, we are where we are today. It's unfortunate that the 53 nations or Muslim nations that we have, none of them have, or the majority, overwhelming majority of them don't have even progress in worldly life, and except for 4 of them. And only one of them from these 4 is the only one that is considered among the developed countries, and that is Turkey. And that happened not because ever since they left Islam in 1924 or canceled Islam. They are the ones that canceled Islam in 1924. Like I mentioned, Islam was canceled by a Muslim as intended by the enemies of Islam. This happened in recent years. And they had both divine enlightenment and progress. Unfortunately, and because of it, they managed to reach the developed world. Unfortunately, we understand from last election that this divine enlightenment starts subsiding down. And we know the end result, if they keep going down in divine enlightenment, what's going to end up happening to them. We need to learn from what happened to the Abbasi Empire and the Muslim Empire in Europe when they left divine enlightenment, even though they were the beacon of knowledge, the superpower of every aspect of life, Allah obliterated them, and their progress did not protect them. So nationalism is a disease of the heart. Before we get into it and how it tripped our Islamic brotherly love, our Islamic camaraderie, like they say, we need to understand how it started from a historic perspective. When the Ottoman Empire canceled the independent thinking back in the 17th or 18th century, and people start having more ignorance in Islam and worldly affairs, no progress is happening. Any new progress for the Ummah that comes, or for the world, whether printing, inoculation, cars, any advancement for the public interest, everything is haram. Because they closed Bab al-Ijtihad, they closed the independent thinking. So anything that comes, it's haram. So now the default became, instead of having the default as in Islam as everything is halal, except for where it's clearly mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah and the consensus of the scholar, now it's the opposite, everything is haram. So what do you think people is gonna do back then? They're gonna be like, this is a very hard religion to be in. So they start looking for alternatives, and one of the alternatives they looked for was nationalism, because in Europe during the 19th century, that's when nationalism starts to rise. So you got the Turks or the Ottomans at that time were educated by the French and the Germans. And the French and the Germans hated religion. So they taught them nationalism, where you have to take off your clothes. You have to take off your Islamic clothing off. Cancel Islam from every aspect of life. And that was the harsh nationalism that the Turks had. The Arabs, on the other hand, the nationalism they were taught by the British is to keep Islam on a worship and ritual basis, and conflate it with nationalism, because they carved the Muslim nations into 53 nations, which the enemies of Islam call it barns, because they consider it, they look at us as animals. So these 53 nations to them as 53 barns. They want them to be national, each one of them to be nationalistic, and conflated only with their with the worship and the rituals of Islam, and not the whole religion of Islam. And since at that time they don't have an understanding of the Quran or the Hadith, they only following al-Imma, al-Ulama, without saying what Allah says, without saying what the Rasul ﷺ saying. So we have at the same time the suspension of the intellect. So they followed blindly, and nationalism starts rising to the degree that they actually convinced the Arabs it's okay to fix the mistake by a bigger mistake, to help the foreign invader to occupy the Holy Land of Palestine, even though Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, for 13 years in Mecca, and the early Sahabas, they faced Al-Aqsa for 13 years. A lot of Muslims forget that they were praying for 13 years toward Al-Aqsa. Rasulullah, when they migrated to Medina, another year and a half, almost, a little bit less, but almost a year and a half. So altogether, 14 and a half years facing Al-Aqsa in prayer. So Rasulullah, who a lot of Muslims claim they love him, they don't understand that he faced the Holy Land of Palestine, Al-Aqsa, for 14 and a half years. And yet, because of nationalism, they neglected that part, and they were able to help the foreign invaders to invade a Muslim land and keep it under invasion until today, because of nationalism. So nationalism, brothers and sisters, is different than patriotism. Patriotism is the love of country. And Rasulullah ﷺ loved Mecca. When he used to pray in Mecca, in the early years of Mecca, his back would face Al-Kaaba for his love of Mecca, and face Al-Aqsa, because that was the first Qibla. And he always was longing for Mecca when he left Mecca. But he was in disagreement with Kuffar Quraysh, with the way they were dehumanizing people, with the way they were treating women, with the way they were treating other people, and these kind of inhumane activities that they used to do. But nationalism, brothers and sisters, will make each country, Arabs or non-Arabs, look at the other Muslim country down. He's not from my color, I'm better than him. He's not an Arab, I'm better than him. He's not from the land of where Rasul is born, I'm better than, and start, putting down other Muslims and looking at other Muslims down. So when it comes to the point where Palestine is gone, it's gone. The Holy Land of Palestine is gone, we don't care. It's not for us, it's for Palestinians. That's what the Arab says, and that's what the other Muslims. Iraq is gone, it doesn't matter, it's gone. Syria is gone, it doesn't matter. Egypt, it doesn't matter. Chinese Muslims, 3 million, that's not our problem. It's all because of nationalism. Because of nationalism, we don't care about the affairs of other Muslims. So we have now the Muslim problem with Kashmir. And you find the brothers asking, where are the Arabs? Well, they only, not the Arabs, people like us. They're talking about the tyrants, of course. You will only find them in the camp of the enemy of Islam. That's where you will find them. That's how they were before, and how they are. That's how they are now, and that's how they're going to be in the future. Only in the camp of the enemy of Islam. How did they reward the enemy of Islam the terrorist Hindu nationalist by giving him awards after they've done what they've done in Kashmir. They will never stand by the affairs of other Muslims, and that's all because of nationalism. And what did nationalism get us? From 1945 until today, whether Arabs or non-Arabs, what did nationalism get us? Even including Kashmir, how many wars we fought for Kashmir. And I've showed to a lot of brothers in here that how the enemies of Allah declared that our problem with Kashmir is because they are Muslims. Not they are in the same color. They are the same mother tongue language. Their problem is not the ethnicity. Their problem with Kashmir that they are Muslims. Their problem is with Islam. So if you're gonna fight them, if we're gonna fight them under the flag of nationalism, I'm telling you from now, you're gonna be defeated. How are you gonna fight someone who hates us because we are Muslims, because of Islam, and you're gonna fight them under the flag of nationalism? That end result is always going to be with defeat. So with nationalism, brothers and sisters, what happened to us? We don't have the honorable morals of Islam. That's the diseases of the heart that we got. And we don't even have the virility or the goodness or the courage of كفار قريش. يعني لا أخلاق الإسلام ولا مروءة كفار قريش. This is what happened to us because of nationalism. And as long as we stay in that track, defeat will always be our end results. That's one, that's nationalism. And that's why you see a lot of scholars of the 20th centuries who recognize that because of nationalism, the disruption of the Islamic Khilafah under the nationalism flag, to the degree in Turkey the adhan was not allowed, religious studies was not allowed, hijab was not allowed, niqab was not, any Islamic feature was not allowed. And in the Arab countries now, they want to keep away from the Islam. So they want to replace the religious studies with what? With another, for the kids, with another class called akhlaq, morals. It's as if it indicate to the world that Islam does not have akhlaq, so we have to give a special class for akhlaq and cancel religion, as if our religion does not promote honorable morals, and our religion promotes the narratives of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam in Mecca and in Medina always was honorable morals, mercy and justice. But they always want to portray Islam the other way. And they will never, these tyrants, allow us, this subject of divine enlightenment and worldly progress, these tyrants, whether religious tyrants or secular or autocrats or secular tyrants, will never allow a subject of divine enlightenment and worldly progress to happen because it endangers their thrones. And they will never allow something like that. So the second thing is blind following. But before we started, why Islam is considered enlightenment? Why Allah describes Islam as basair, as nur, as light in the Quran? And what is enlightenment? As I mentioned in the first ayah, Islam came to take people from the roads of darknesses that we are in right now, whether under nationalism, under blind following, under tyranny, and many others, to the one road of light, and that is Islam. So an enlightened human being in general is one who has the courage to use his own understanding, a person who's able to reason, and a person who's able to differentiate between what's right and wrong, between justice and injustice. In Islamic terms, this means one who is competent to do his own independent thinking. I'm not saying we're going to be muftis, but because we are able to recognize the difference between right and wrong, we go and ask the proper person the proper question if it's concerned our deen, our Islamic affairs. Decent Muslim scholars of today and the 20th century who started the subject of enlightenment and worldly progress, not the scholars of the sultans, there is nothing you're going to learn from them, are seeking to liberate Muslims' reason from the shackles of stagnant religious traditions that have deprived us of the freedom to use reason. Just do as I tell you. Forget about what Allah says, or they don't even know what Allah says and what the Rasul ﷺ said. Just do as I say. That's what they taught. This is how we are being taught. And good luck teaching that to the kids of today. And then we wonder why 23% of the kids today leave Islam. So our scholars always of the 20th century and today, and I'm only talking about the good scholars, not the scholars of the Sultan. I'm going to keep reminding you that. So those scholars lamented or wept or complained about the fact that due to us being not involved, it's like the way my generation, the way I was raised, my generation was raised, like the Arabs would say, walk next to the wall, don't be involved in anything. Just go to school and come back, go to work and come back. Don't say anything. Hear no evil, say no evil, and see no evil. In other words, just be a coward. That is okay. A great proportion of Muslims remained in this state of immaturity because of that, and subcontracted their thinking and faculties of judgment to others. And who are the others? The others are the tyrants. They want us to see what they see. And that's why you only find, especially in Arab satellite televisions, as some of you know, only the scholars of the sultans who will only explain the Quran. They cannot distort Quran. They cannot, they can bring some fake hadith or fabricated hadith or weak hadith. But what they do is fabricate the explanation of the Quran to the understanding of the tyrant for the benefit of the tyrant. And the religious tyrants, what they do is fabricate the explanation of Quran and Sunnah for their political causes. That's the religious tyrants for you. So what we have today, because of nationalism, tyranny, whether religious tyranny and secular tyranny, is fake Islam. We don't have a true official Islam in the Muslim world. It's all fake Islam. True official Islam is among the people, but not on the official state level in the 53 countries. It's all fake Islam. That's what they teach. So these are the tyrants who they want us to subtract, and the scholars of the Sultan. So our scholars agree that the Muslim world can come out of this state they are in if people have the courage and freedom to use reason publicly in all matters for the benefits of not only the Muslims, for all mankind, because we came as a mercy for all mankind. We came for happiness to all mankind in this life and in the life hereafter. So the present ummah, the way they are, they exist in a state of immaturity as the consensus among our intellectuals, among our decent Muslim scholars. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Ask Allah for forgiveness. He is the most forgiving, the most merciful. الحمد لله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. So any attempts that happen for independent thinking, whether on the level of religious affairs from the 20th century or on worldly affairs, have failed. Yes, we have Islamic awakening, especially from the scholars of the 20th centuries, but a lot of them are dead. Some of them died in jail, some of them were executed, some of them were tortured. The scholars of today, the decent ones, they either being expelled out of their countries or in jail, suffering, being tortured or awaiting execution. That's the situation, because remember, divine enlightenment and worldly progress in sciences. When we talk worldly progress, brothers and sisters, I'm talking in general in the affairs of education, in the affairs of us making our own weapons, rather than buying it. In affairs of us Muslims making our own food, being self-sufficient. In affairs of us making our own pharmaceutical and medicine, at least to lift us to be among the developed countries. When we talk about worldly progress, which Muslim country has that? It's only one that reached to that level of being developed, and that is Turkey. Yeah, there are others like Indonesia, Iran, and Pakistan when it comes to weapons and pharmaceutical and having their own food, but it's not to the level where the needle is moving. It's not to the level where they are developed countries. It's not there yet. And we are 53 countries, and yet we don't have the masses doing that. And all because of ignorance and blind following and nationalism. Our scholars, they tell us that blind following is a calamity that hit the Abbasi Empire, but it hit us the most. New scholars are appreciated as long as they are seen as revivals of the past. They want us to follow a fatwa from 1,000 years ago, which was right back in 1,000 years ago, but it doesn't apply to us right now. And for the sake of this subject, I'm just going to bring this example and end with it, and we'll continue next time. The issue with talaq, with divorce. The enemies of Islam, the Hindu nationalist terrorists, make a decision that any Muslim in India who does the talaq verbally 3 times, they put them in jail. Now, back in the days, that fatwa of a Muslim making the talaq verbally 3 times, back in those days, wasn't common like us. And I thought it's only this disease, verbal disease among the men, is only among us Arabs. I didn't even know our Muslim brothers in India had this problem too, that every time they get upset or they are drunk or they are high, they go and do the talaq thingy verbally like 3 times, like the Arabs do a lot, willy-nilly, like they say. But even though this is a mistake from our part, I don't want a Hindu nationalist teaching us our religions and how to fix it. We want our scholars to look into this. And among them is the Sheikh Dr. Riyas al-Qadi is leading the effort. Like Islam allows us to change. Islam does not necessarily a fatwa that was correct 1,000 years ago, it's correct now. And especially when it comes to public interest. I don't want people to put words in my mouth. Are you now making homosexuality halal? No. I'm talking about affairs that concerns public interest, like family. And your family unit is very important. So we need something from the scholars to look into it rather than doing blind following. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam was very keen on public interest and the affairs of the society. I don't think if Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam among us today and see how men use the word, the divorce word willy-nilly up and down, like whenever they feel like it, he will like it. He will approve being unjust to our Muslim sisters or wives or mothers. I would like to remind all the parents. Inshallah, we'll continue next time. Our schools is starting Tuesday, inshallah, the 3rd. From 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. and registration will be also on that day. I will also like to remind myself first and foremost, and you, with the hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, 2 words very heavy in the scale of good deeds, very light on the tongue. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, Subhanallah al-Azim, to say it at least 100 times a day. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to send prayers on Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when he told us in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. وأقم الصلاة. أنا الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر.